All right, here we are with another episode of The High Ground, powered by Premier Companies. Good morning, Sal.
Hey, good morning.
Hey, we got a returning guest with us this morning, Josh X, Vice President of Fertilizer with StoneX. How's it going, Josh?
Going good. Man, you guys couldn't get enough last time. You got to have me back. I'm impressed. Most people do it once and like, boy, we're not doing this again.
Well, we need to do it more regularly. I think your world gets rocked about every day with some different kind of news, so we could probably have you on about every week. But no, we're glad you agreed to come back. You're probably one of our more famous friends. We're just glad you answer when we reach out. So
all the rest are one-time guests.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So you and a couple others are been regular victims. So, hey, we're glad to have you. So we're going to start you off with the question of the day. Then we're going to dig into what affects your life in the fertilizer world. So, and it's not just weather conditions in the Midwest. So we'll get to that in a minute. So, Josh, your question of the day is: if you could host a dinner party with 3 historical guests, who would you pick and what would you serve?
Man, it's awfully early in the morning. I haven't even got to my first cup of coffee yet. That's a tough question.
We asked the last guest what was their favorite sandwich, and you get this one.
Yeah, we thought that was hard, so we thought we'd take it easy on you.
We're like, what's your favorite sandwich?
All right. They don't have to be famous, right?
Nope.
And I'm going to go sappy. You always hear people get asked those types of questions, like, who would you have for dinner with or anything like that? And the historical people's like, whatever. They did what they did. Man, I'll tell you what, give anything, one more dinner with the grandparents and cousin who died on a road crew about a decade and a half ago. I'd do that in a heartbeat over anybody else.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Wow. Yeah. What would you serve? Any particular meal stick out with that group?
I'll tell you what, if I'm digging up Grandma, I hope to God she serves roast and mashed potatoes one more time.
You're going to make her cook? Oh, my God.
I know you just came back. But I really could.
But if you've got time.
This is horrible.
I was feeling pretty bad about my answer until he said that. I'm not going to make my guest cook.
Oh, my gosh.
That's fantastic. So, Sal, what do you got?
Well, I can't top that. And I don't know. This was a hard question for me because I was, of course, you got the Sunday school answers, right? I mean, that's they got the Sunday school answers. But beyond that, I mean, I'd think about Alexander Hamilton and Thomas Jefferson and my wife and my little girl. They're in Washington, D.C. this week for their junior high field trip, and Abraham Lincoln. And I just think that just to meet the people that were smart enough to write that Constitution, write the Declaration of Independence, and then later on our 18th president with Abraham Lincoln. Just if you read the Gettysburg Address and just some of the things that it's hard to believe that a man could write those things. That so profound at the time. So I think just some of those guys, founding fathers, and Abraham Lincoln.
So I start to picture no politician you necessarily could run across today, right?
Yeah, right. Nothing in common with what we have today.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah. Just making sure that these are not politicians I could ever run across. Right now.
What would I feed them?
Right. Exactly.
I don't know. We might feed them something they've never had before.
Because we've heard enough. We've heard enough of the ones we have today. So, all right. Well, I picked a different group.
Wait a second. I got to feed these guys.
Oh, you got to feed them. Yeah, go ahead.
I'll feed them spaghetti. They'd like spaghetti. They probably never had spaghetti, I'm sure.
Well, that's funny. That's good. That's good. So I have spaghetti as well because you're always supposed to feed guests spaghetti to see how they deal with it, because it's a hard meal to eat. So yeah, but so I picked 3 from 3 different genres. I picked Teddy Roosevelt because I think it'd be fun to listen to him. Leo Fender, who developed the Fender guitars and the Fender instrument line up.
Stratocasters.
Yep, and he's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and was not a guitar player. So that's an interesting little tidbit that you're supposed to learn something every day. If you didn't already know that, chalk it up. You don't have to learn anything else today.
Okay, well, so much for your podcast here,
right,
Josh.
Yeah, right. Well, I would just act surprised whenever he says what he needs to say. And then Frank Lloyd Wright. the architect. I'd like to have all three of them. I think that would be a really good dinner conversation, and we too would have spaghetti just to see how people deal with it. And it's impossible to be it's almost impossible to be neat and proper eating spaghetti.
Yeah.
So anyway, all right, enough of that nonsense. Josh, you got several things we chatted previously about some of the things that affect your world. So why don't you talk to us just a little bit, right? We're in the middle of planting season and delayed a little bit with weather today. So talk to us about nitrogen and the Middle East and sort of how that's all tied together.
Yeah, so obviously we've had a lot of eyes on the Middle East whole area, and it really boils down to, you talk about the Israel versus Hamas, you talk about the Houthi rebels and things like that, and all those are absolutely important. They're tragic events we don't ever want to see happen. But when it comes down to the world of fertilizer, my focus is on Iran. And so the reason for that is, if Iran were to start taking more steps towards trying to shut down traffic in the Persian Gulf, which go back to the Desert Storm, right? The three of us were old enough to remember what happened back then. And what was the discussion? It's like oil tankers aren't going to get through. It's so dangerous. Iraq's going to attack them. And oil prices fluctuate and everybody lost their minds, right?
Yep.
Iraq has this tiny little piece of real estate on the very northern edge of the Persian Gulf, and it created all those waves. Go look at a map. Go look at Iran in terms of the Persian Gulf. Wow. That entire eastern seaboard is their country. And the scary part is, and I'm going to encompass North Africa as well, but when you look at North Africa in the Middle East, 1 out of every 2 tons of urea that is exported in the world comes from that little piece of the map.
One out of every 2 tons comes through that geography.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
All right, fine. We can learn some stuff from him if you want.
So that's the thing. It's as we've continued to watch this, and actually, so 2 nights ago we had our Music Parents Association meeting, and I'm sitting there on both of my cell phones, my work phone and my personal cell phone, because the IDF, Israel, was pushing back into Gaza. They had found more of the Hamas officials, terrorists, and they were going after them. And the worry from my standpoint, the reason I was watching so closely is, okay, if they take that step, does that now mean we're going to see other nations start to do something to them? And again, it goes back to, we have seen Iran and Israel trade shots. If that thing had spiraled out of control, all Iran has to do is go out there in that Strait of Hormuz, which is that real narrow waterway before it gets out in the open ocean, and just make it hell for those boats to get through. And all of a sudden, guys, urea prices, I don't even know how to tell you what prices would be if they were to stop traffic coming through that area. And then, okay, so you might be thinking, well, that's only urea, Josh. What about everything else? If the price of UAN were to skyrocket, do you think anhydrous is going to follow? Do you think UAN is going to follow? Do you think every other side small form of nitrogen is going to follow?
Yeah.
Bet.
Wow. And it's not like they need, they really don't need aircraft carriers to plug that little bottleneck. They can mine it. They can, obviously you can see what the Ukrainians have done with drones and just the risk, I mean, no one's going to send a commercial ship into an area when there's just the threat, just the risk of it.
We saw that with the Red Sea.
Sure.
That one vessel, there's been one vessel that was attacked and eventually sunk. Now, fortunately, their crew got off, but that vessel is loaded with fertilizer they had loaded up in Saudi Arabia. And every other ship owner, I mean, put yourself in the shoes of somebody who owns that ship. Are you going to put your vessel in danger? Are you going to put your crew that you were responsible for in danger? No, not if I have that opportunity where I can just sail around the south tip of Africa. It's going to cost more, but guess what? All of my vessel freight contracts have got wartime clauses where if there's things like this happening, I get to do what I need to do. And if I have to sail south, it's going to take more time, but you know what? I'm going to charge you more anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
Or go buy your own boats and you do it. Right?
Yeah.
How much of this do you want? Yeah, right?
Go.
Wow. Well, okay. So that so the one conflict to another. So what about I think the last time we were on here we talked about Ukraine, and it's hard to believe we're still talking about it, which is in a way it's good, in a way it's bad. But so the Ukraine and Russia conflict and that war, not conflict, but what's the I guess the short term and I guess long term ramifications? I guess does it matter? I mean, it seems like a stalemate at the moment, but then again, the U.S. just came back in with some military aid, some money for bigger missiles and longer range missiles, and what's the threat for that for our world? I guess as it speaks to fertilizer.
The strange thing is, we had gone into this conflict when it first started, and we topped out a lot of the fertilizer prices. It was March of 22, and going into April of 22. That was the highs that we hit during this last few years. And that was because the Ukrainian invasion had started, and everybody thought, oh my gosh, we're going to lose all of Russian exports. And it's not just one product, right? They're a major exporter of phosphate. They're a major exporter of potash. They're a major exporter of all nitrogens. Oh my gosh, we're going to lose them. That's a huge amount of product loss. So we're going to be really, really tight globally. Guys, Russia's actually been beating their 3-year average on most fertilizer exports. So we went from that early 2022 thinking we are going to lose Russia completely to today. They're actually beating expectations, all with the exception of anhydrous. And the reason anhydrous is what they would used to do historically is they have a pipeline that originates obviously in Russia at the plants, and it goes through that southeastern corridor of Ukraine and out to Odessa and out to sea. Well, you don't really get to use the pipeline like that when you're actively invading a country and fighting them in a war. So the one product that has actually suffered is anhydrous. Those exports have gone to near zero, but we think that we're going to see that back. They've been working on a new facility in a place called Taman, which is just east of Crimea. And we think that will start to return anhydrous exports, which, again, a major bearish event for all global nitrogens out there. But take it a step further. That presumes that you don't see Crimea go attack it, because they've had a lot of success attacking targets inland. That would actually be a fairly good income flow if they were to start exporting anhydrous. Go hit that facility. And an anhydrous facility like that, it doesn't take a lot of damage to set you back months.
No. But how are the Russians getting out of the Black Sea, though? I didn't know that there was still a what's it called, a treaty or whatever they had at one point there about 6 months ago. That all expired. As far
now, that's the problem. Who wants to go and fight Russia directly? Is anybody going to sit there and go to a Russian vessel directly and say, nope, we're going to let you, we're going to send a military ship after you and stop you, and if you don't stop, we're going to sink you? Nobody wants that direct conflict. That's why we continue to send billions upon billions of Ukraine. We're fighting Russia. Don't worry about that. I mean, we're absolutely fighting them, but it's a proxy war. We can't do it directly because that has whole different ramifications out there.
Interesting. Well, we can't hardly have a conversation about any kind of import or export without talking about China.
Let's just go around the globe.
Yeah. How are they doing?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and China, I'll tell you what, they're here again, they're gone tomorrow. And this is the problem, is China is such an important part of many fertilizers, and we're still reactionary because you don't know what is going to go on in China. So backing it up just a little bit, throughout the last few years, the Chinese central government came out and said, listen, we have noticed that our farmers are paying exorbitant prices for fertilizer. We're scared that we're going to export so much, there's not going to be enough for them. We're communists. We tell you what to do. You are going to stop or slow down significantly your export flows. And what that does is twofold. Number one, it makes sure Chinese farmers have more than adequate supply versus the rest of the world. And it lowers their domestic price because they're a net exporter of urea. They're a net exporter of phosphate. And if you keep all those tons in and you've got just stuff sitting around, you can't export it as an overflow, your price drops. And it did, I hate to say it, it did a phenomenal job. It did exactly what it was supposed to do. But now we're living in a world where everything is kind of gone. You know, a lot of my presentations have moved from here's the list of all the Black Swan events to we're now post-Black Swan events, kind of getting back to normal. And the Chinese government's all the same thing. They're like, okay, we're going to start allowing exports to happen on urea. Well, very quickly, what do you think that price does when all of a sudden exporters can start to operate again? Higher and higher and higher. The government said, whoa, 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 whoa. The entire market was falling apart because they thought China was coming. The boogeyman of the urea market was coming back. And the Chinese government said, slow down. We're not going to let this thing get out of hand. We're going to start restricting those a little bit more. And this is where we start to get conflicting reports. The official statements are that they're going to, go back to slowing things down. The unofficial, kind of what you hear here and there, is that they're going to allow exports to go. They're just trying to do it quietly, and they're just trying to pump the brakes on these prices going up like they had been.
Well, let's bring it back to North America. I mean, we went around Is there anything else we need to hit before we get back to North America? And so at the end of the day, what about us? What does this mean to us? I mean, in the short term this year, and then looking into this fall.
Well, fortunately, we've been doing pretty well. When you look at the nitrogen market, we're doing quite well. We've obviously been tracking urea imports really, really closely. We just got the March data for the U.S. here not so long ago. And based on what we've got, based on what we are forecasting we need for the entire fertilizer year, which ends June 30th, we need, I'm not going to say very little, we need about 625,000 ton each month, April and May, to reach our goal line. And guys, that's a small amount. It doesn't sound small, but it's not uncommon for us to bring in 7 figures during one, maybe both of those 2 months. So we're doing very well there. UAN is tight. That's a story, unfortunately. I think the manufacturer stays in control. Does not mean prices cannot fall, but it's going to be a lot stickier. We came into this fertilizer year back in July 1st, very low on inventories. You remember last spring, fantastic run, wiped everything out. There was nothing left. Number 2, production issues. We had some downtime that we had planned, what we had expected, but there was that Arctic blast that hit that hurt production. There was turnarounds that lasted longer than we thought they would last. There were a lot of issues there that reduced the number of supplies that we thought would be available. And then number 3, you look at the import-export differential. We are enjoying a lot of Russian UAN being imported into the U.S., but we are exporting almost the exact same number of tons out to Europe. So we're gaining very little. I think we are ahead for the fertilizer. The entire period since July 1, I think we've imported 300,000 more than we've exported. So inventories are very tight, and I think that's going to continue. Phosphate, that season's all but over, but we've got some issues there. There's a few stories there to unwind. But I would say potash is the one out of all the fertilizers. Potash is still the one that when we talk about it, 3 of us, we still look at that as the one fertilizer that is going to be teetering that line between well-supplied and oversupplied in the coming years. And that's fantastic for farmers.
Yeah.
Okay. What about, we've had river issues the last couple of years. We watched Sal and several of us got to see a really nice presentation on the river and those low water issues that we had. I think we're having opposite problems of that right at the moment in certain spots, at least along the Ohio. So anything that you see once it's here from a Gulf standpoint, any of those problems?
No. And in fact, to your point, it's been raining so much. I've actually been kind of lightly watching to see, are we going to see over flooding? Are we going to see, high waters, that sort of thing starting to pop up again? Not hearing any reports, not hearing anybody slowing down, stopping, but it's something's on the radar. But yeah, it's, like it is on the river system. It's feast or famine here for the last couple of years.
Oh, for sure.
It's either on or off.
Yep. Yeah, it has been, and that we did hear about a couple of barges that were struggling to be unloaded just because the water was too high, and getting them getting them off, and being able to reach them with the crane. So that is it's just one, just another thing in this world. So planting has been moving along, and what we seem to think has been pretty quick around here. Reading some articles that says, hey, don't get discouraged. It's not late yet in some spots. So oversight, and I know you have a better view of the entire country. How's planting going? I mean, we probably got shoulder high corn in Texas, I'm assuming. So
yeah, I think what was it, last week we were kind of ahead of schedule. This week we're behind schedule.
Yeah.
Or at least the average. And I will say around here at home, that's exactly where we are. We're still struggling. My uncle came over from Big Island. He and his wife, my aunt, moved over there once he retired, and he likes to come back and help with planting. And I think he was here for 2.5 weeks. One day, he got to help for 1 5-hour day. And I was like, why don't you just extend your flight? He's like, well, Angie's got, a doctor appointment on Oahu, so I got to fly her up there.
Because there's no beach here, and after a while, I'm sort of tired of it.
And it's rainy.
Yeah. What? He sits there, he's like, man, it's gorgeous. It's paradise. That island gets real small real fast.
I bet that's probably true. True.
Yep.
Yeah. But let's just sit there. I do think we're backing up. And I mean, you look at the rains that continue to move across. I mean, that one, the system that hit you guys last night, that hit us the night before, that was wide ranging, right? That hit everybody. That backed up almost the entirety of the Midwest.
Wow.
So it's backing up the planting, but it is doing one good thing for the fertilizer markets. and that's giving it more time to prepare. We've kind of been almost in a catch-up mode for quite a while, right? Talked about tight UAN inventories. We still got urea that needs to be dispersed throughout the system. This delay just means it gives us that many more days, that many more weeks to get the product up into the inland, and hopefully get some of these lower prices we've been seeing around the world, hopefully get those up into the retail sector and out to the farm gate.
Good.
Excellent. Anything StoneX news-wise or anything you want to share with us other than what we've already talked about?
Not really. Oh, I tell you what, there is one thing we do need to talk about.
Oh, and you need to tell us too before you quit. You need to tell us where all you're going to be and what all you're going to be on, so people can tune in and see you. So go ahead with yours first, and then give us a little calendar of events.
All right. So we need to watch Phosphate very closely. If you don't remember, we've got back in the summer of 2020, there was a countervailing duty case that was asked for against Morocco and Russia, right? And we already had one against China. Well, there's been a lot of back and forth over the years on that thing. The rates were higher, they were lower. And here recently, there was another review going on. And we were really, really hopeful they were going to drop Morocco at least down to zero and allow them to start coming back, because fall season, very tight on inventories. MAP was a huge premium to DAP. NOLA was a huge premium to the rest of the world because we were so tight. Short winter turnaround, big spring, yet again, tight inventories. Unfortunately, the Commerce Department of Commerce, I always say that's wrong, it saw it in their infinite wisdom. Morocco's rate was 2.12%. They're moving that into the 14% range.
From 2.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
So when you look at it, China, Russia, Morocco are 3 of the world's largest phosphate exporters in the world. The only 2 that are left in the top 5 is the U.S. and Saudi Arabia. So unfortunately, we are still dealing with a phosphate market that's very, very tight, very restricted in terms of what goes on. I know there's always a lot of back and forth, like, oh, that helps our farmers. I'll tell you from a theoretical standpoint, no, it doesn't. Because if the U.S. is calling for sanctions on these tons to come in, the rest of the world farmers get to enjoy that, because now places like Morocco, Russia, China are sitting there saying, well, I got to go find somewhere else to go. I got to get aggressive. I got to get my price lowered. And we're sitting here with prices that are above the world. So that was a very unfortunate event. It's not set in stone. It's supposed to be the final determination vote is supposed to be in November. And I am crossing my fingers they will come through and change their mind, have a change of heart by that point. But unfortunately, guys, I think phosphate is going to continue to trend at a higher than what it should be versus grains price. And inventories are going to be snug. We got to stay on top of our toes with phosphate. And I really hope I get to come on sometime Q4, Q1 and tell you we were dead wrong on it. They changed it. Morocco zero. They're coming back. Everything's going to be fantastic. Phosphate still spooks me. So we got a world market because China's returning. They're the largest MAP exporter in the world. That's helping put a lot of softness in the world market. But then we're sitting here kind of like, yeah, it's great, but man, we're tight here still.
Yeah, and if there's a run up in prices, I mean, no one wants to be left with inventory that's, that can go the wrong way on them. I mean, it's no one wants 1,000 tons or 2,000 tons or 10,000 tons of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, okay. Well, Josh, where are you going to be at? Tell us where all you're going to be, and how can we find you out in the world?
You know what? This is going to sound weird. I don't have any travel scheduled.
Well, what a letdown. What a letdown.
This is the first time we've had you not in a hotel room.
Yeah, this is exactly.
Yeah. So a few weeks ago, I was actually in Panama City. We had our Latin America conference, so flew down there to give a presentation on fertilizer, talk with some folks, and that wrapped up my winter season. The fun thing is, when farmers and retailers, everybody started getting busy, I slowed way down, because who the heck wants me bugging them? They've got stuff to do. They got real stuff to do. So now at this point, I have got nothing on my calendar until that big Southwest Fertilizer Conference in Nashville here in the middle of July.
Well, good for you.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
You got any family vacations coming?
No, but it turns out I still have a family. I was just happy about that.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Well, that's great. That's great. Well, I tell you, your insight is always appreciated and valued. There's no doubt about it. And we do see you pop up on occasion. And you want to give us your social media contacts. That way people that don't know can catch up with you. If you want to throw those out there, we can get them up on the screen. So.
Yeah. Twitter's the biggest thing, right? I still try and do stuff on that at J Linville Fert. Still trying to do that stuff daily, throw out some tidbits there. Actually, they've been bugging me about trying to do like a short little YouTube video once or twice a week. I'm like, man, I've already got enough stuff I'm doing, but that might be something at some point in time, just a real quick recap. But, otherwise, you go to StoneX.com. You can find me on there if you need to reach out. Emails josh.linville@stonex.com. But yeah, those are the two biggest places.
Nice.
Right. I'm a simpleton. What can I say? I'm in fertilizer. I can't be overly complicated.
Yeah, I think as Jeff Jarrett always puts it, if he had done better in school, he wouldn't have been in fertilizer, right?
The big joke is everybody in the fertilizer industry is the kids that sat in the back row of class and shot spitwads at each other.
That's funny. I just listened to a book by Michael Lewis about trading, and he talked about the back row group as well. And yeah, that's funny. So hey, we're gonna let you go, and thank you for this insight. We'll get this thing out to our listeners, and always appreciate the information you bring to us. And we hope to have you back in the very near future, and for sure by the end of the year to see how good your recap turned out to be. So with that,
look forward to it.
Yep. All right. With that, that's another episode of The High Ground, powered by Premier Companies. Please like and subscribe. Thanks, Josh.
Thanks, Josh.